Imagine holding a book, its pages filled with ancient secrets, but the cover is made from something undeniably, chillingly human. Not just any leather, but skin, human skin. And this isn't some urban legend, it's a terrifying historical fact. From libraries of esteemed scholars to private collections, these books exist, whispering forgotten stories, not only through their text, but through the very material that binds them. What kind of knowledge was worth such a grotesque sacrifice? And more disturbingly, who were the people whose final resting place became the cover of a macabre tome? To understand this profound, unsettling practice, we need to delve back into a different time, a period when the lines between medicine, anatomy, and the macabre were often blurred. The practice you're contemplating is known as anthropodermic bibliopegy, the binding of books in human skin. While it sounds like something plucked from a Gothic horror novel, it was, for a specific period in history, a known, albeit rare, method of bookbinding. This wasn't some widespread trend, but rather a niche, almost cultish practice, often reserved for texts deemed uniquely significant or as a dark trophy. The earliest verified instances of anthropodermic bibliopegy date back to the 17th century, though some speculate it might have older roots. It flourished most notably in the 18th and 19th centuries, a time of significant advancements in anatomical study, but also of laxer ethical standards concerning human remains. Medical texts were prime candidates for such bindings, often taken from the very cadavers dissected for the book's content. Imagine a surgeon, meticulously documenting his findings on human anatomy, only to have the finished volume bound in the skin of one of his subjects. The irony is as unsettling as it is profound. But it wasn't just medical professionals. Legal practitioners, especially those involved in criminal justice, also dipped their pens into this macabre inkwell. Confessions, accounts of famous trials, or even records of executions sometimes found themselves encased in the skin of the condemned. It served as a stark, tangible warning, a permanent mark of justice, or perhaps a grim memento. Yet the true horror often lies not just in the act itself, but in the specific details and motivations behind it. In France, during the tumultuous French Revolution, there are chilling accounts of books bound in the skin of executed aristocrats. One particularly disturbing rumor, difficult to definitively confirm but persistent in historical whispers, speaks of a tannery in Meudon, outside Paris, where human skin was allegedly processed for a variety of uses, including bookbinding. The idea that political fervor could escalate to such a grotesque degree, transforming human remains into objects of documentation and display, is a chilling testament to humanity's darker impulses. These weren't always acts of pure malice. Sometimes they were born from a bizarre sense of scientific curiosity, a desire for permanence, or perhaps an attempt to immortalize a memory in the most literal, unsettling way possible. Consider the notorious case of a copy of Les Secrets des Arts et Métiers by Arlancourt. This book, detailing various crafts and trades, found a unique and utterly disturbing binding. Its cover was crafted from the skin of a famous highwayman, executed for his crimes. The story goes that the bookbinder, fascinated by the criminal's notoriety, requested his skin post-execution. To bind a book about human ingenuity and skill using the skin of a man who misused his own creates a deeply ironic and unsettling artifact. The surface of the skin, reportedly, even bore the faint traces of the criminal's tattoos, a final, macabre signature. This wasn't just a book, it was a relic, a monument built upon a body, a constant silent reminder of a life cut short and a grim justice served. The tangible connection to the deceased, through their very essence, adds an unparalleled layer of creepiness to such objects. But things took an even darker turn when the focus shifted from criminals to the innocent, or at least those who didn't explicitly consent to their skin becoming a book cover. In the 2000s, an investigation by researchers at the Harvard Law Library sent shivers down the spine of academia. They had in their possession a 19th-century French text on Roman law, Des Destinées de l'âme, on the destinies of the soul, by Arsène Housset. For generations, the book's inscription had proudly declared, "The binding of this book is all that remains of my dear friend, Jonas Wright, who was flayed alive by the Wavuma tribe on the 4th day of August, 1632. Less than a third of the whole volume was bound in his skin. Prepare yourselves." This was always seen as a macabre joke, a literary flourish, too outlandish to be true. After all, the date was anachronistic and the story fantastical. But then, a new scientific technique emerged: peptide mass fingerprinting. This allowed scientists to differentiate between human and animal skin at a molecular level without damaging the artifact. And what did they find? The binding was, unequivocally, human. The inscription, while containing some fictional elements for dramatic effect, held a terrible truth. While the Jonas Wright story was likely fabrication by a later owner, the underlying fact remained. Someone's skin, not animal hide, formed that book's cover. The shift from assumed literary embellishment to verified anatomical fact was horrifying. This revelation forced a re-examination of other suspect books. Another infamous example is a copy of Common Prayer in the Athenaeum of Philadelphia. This book, dating to the late 18th century, was bound in the skin of a woman named Mary Lynch. The detailed backstory claims she died of consumption, and her skin was used by her physician, Dr. John Stockton Hough, to bind the book. The inscription inside states, "The text is a common prayer, but not bound in common paper or animal skin. The skin of my patient, Mary Lynch, bound this book. She died of consumption in 1869, and I, her physician, bound this book as a tribute, a memento mori." Dr. Hough, it seems, had a disturbing fascination with using human remains in his work, not only binding books, but also creating lampshades from human skin. His motivations appear to have been a morbid blend of scientific curiosity and a desire to create lasting, tangible mementos of his patients. The idea that a doctor, entrusted with care, would then literally turn a deceased patient into an object pushes the boundaries of ethical conduct into truly abhorrent territory. These aren't just historical curiosities. They are profound ethical dilemmas preserved in leather and paper. Perhaps the most detailed and chilling confession of such a practice comes from Dr. John Stockton Hough himself. In 1893, he wrote a letter describing his binding of a book about female anatomy, De Humanis Corporis Fabrica Libri Septem, by Andreas Vesalius, with the skin of a deceased woman. He explicitly detailed how he acquired the skin. The skin was taken from the back of the woman. It was a firm, thick piece of skin, and the color was yellow in places, with some of the original hairs still attached. He spoke of his great pleasure in using the skin for this purpose. This isn't a vague rumor or an ambiguous inscription. This is a direct, unapologetic account from the man who performed the act. It's a stark, uncomfortable window into the mind of someone who saw no moral barrier in transforming human remains into an academic artifact. The meticulousness of his description only adds to the profound disquiet. What they discovered next, or rather, what these discoveries confirmed, changed everything we understood about these macabre objects. They were not merely fables or artistic licenses. They were tangible evidence of a deeply unsettling historical practice. The motivations varied, from the grim justice of binding a criminal's story in their own skin to the perverse scientific curiosity of a doctor or the morbid memorialization of a loved one. Each book, each skin-bound volume, carries with it an echo of a life, a story, and a terrifying choice made by another. These aren't just books to be read, they are artifacts to be reckoned with, forcing us to confront the darker chapters of human history and the sometimes unsettling lengths people would go to preserve knowledge, power, or memory. The unsettling truth of anthropodermic bibliopegy reminds us that history is not always neat and tidy, nor are human motivations always pure. These books, existing in the hushed archives of prestigious institutions, stand as chilling monuments to a time when ethical boundaries were profoundly different, or perhaps simply non-existent. To this day, the sheer existence of these volumes continues to spark debate, prompting questions about their respectful storage, display, and whether they should ever be fully exhibited. They are not merely objects of academic interest, they are physical manifestations of human lives, grotesquely repurposed. Their silent presence serves as a macabre memento mori, a chilling reminder of the lengths to which some would go, and the dark secrets that can be bound within the covers of a book. If you want more spine-tingling tales from history, our next video explores the mystery of cursed objects that seemingly bring misfortune to all who possess them.